Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 35 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4. And we are today starting chapter 15. Means we're kind of in the middle. There's 31 chapters in the whole fourth canto. So we're pretty much in the middle. Chapter 15 is titled King Prithu's Appearance and Coronation. So, right, let's get into it. First of all, though, let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchkalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Right, devotees. So here we go. Just to recap for a minute or maybe two, we went through the story of Dhruva Maharaj in detail, really in detail. What a great devotee, what a great personality. Then we discussed about his descendants, the next generation, next couple, 2 or 3 generations. Right, and then we came to a devotee, actually a great devotee, really, wonderful devotee, king named King Anga. And it's a long story, but the thing is that somehow or other, I won't get into the details, somehow or other though, he had a son who was just a terrible, hopelessly terrible person named Vena. And in due course, because he's the son of the king, Vena became the king. But he was such a terrible person, I mean, incredibly terrible actually, that the Brahmins cursed him to die, and he died. So now there's no king. So what to do? So by what was called churning the body of Vena, dead body, but still present, hasn't been cremated. So first of all, out comes like a very degraded sort of person, Nishada. And now, who's going to come is King Prithu and his wife. So that's the background to where we are right now. Yes, so it's King Prithu's appearance, and then his coronation. So here then, devotees, we have, actually it's a very short chapter. It's only 26 verses. That's really one of the shortest chapters that we get. And it's divided into 4 sections. First section, from verse 1 to verse 3, we call a male and a female come from the churning. The male being Prithu. And that's from verse 1 to verse 3. a male and a female come from the churning of the body, of the thighs even, of Vena, the dead body of Vena. So there you go, male and a female come from the churning, verse 1 to verse 3. Then the second section, verse 4 to verse 13, the appearance of King Prithu is celebrated. Then the third section, verse 14 to verse 20, the demigods make presentations to Prithu. And finally, the fourth section, verse 21 to verse 26, Prithu addresses the assembly. Right, so there you go. Let's get right into it. First section, verse 1 to verse 3. A male and a female come from the churning of the body, of the dead body of Vena. Right, okay, so let's have a look here. And, well, I think we're just going to go straight through this. Verse 1, the great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, thus the Brahmins and the great sages again churned the two arms of King Vena's dead body. As a result, a male and female couple came out of his arms. And there's no purport there, so we go on to verse 2. The great sages were highly learned in Vedic knowledge. When they saw the male and female born of the arms of Vena's body, they were very pleased, for they could understand that the couple was an expansion of a plenary portion of Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's a very short purport here. Let's just have a quick look at it. So first thing is just carrying on from the point in this verse, how those great sages who were doing all this churning and, carrying things out here, they were highly learned. So the method that they were using was actually perfect. So first of all, they removed all bad reactions of Vena's sinful activities by, first of all, arranging that Vena gave birth to Bahuka, the very low-class Nishada. So he took all the negativity, all the bad karma, everything bad out of Vena's body. So now Vena's body is purified. They keep churning, and a male and female come out. And the sages could understand this is an expansion of Lord Vishnu and his consort. It was not actually Vishnu Tattva, but Shaktyavesh avatar, a jiva who is especially empowered by the Lord. So he's a type of avatar, empowered by the potency of the Lord. Right, so verse 3, the great sages said, the male is a plenary expansion of the power of Lord Vishnu, who maintains the entire universe, and the female is a plenary expansion of the goddess of fortune, who's never separated from the Lord. So the fact, but here's the purport now, the fact that the goddess of fortune is never separated from her husband, the Supreme Lord, is mentioned here, very important point. People are fond of the goddess of fortune. They want her favor in the form of riches, but you must know she's inseparable from the Supreme Lord. So if you really want her mercy, particularly consistently, you must worship him or worship them together and not just focus on her separately. And Prabhupada says in this way material opulence can be maintained. But if a materialist follows the program of Ravana, trying to steal the goddess of fortune from the Lord, take her away, enjoy her independently, that he'll be vanquished, he'll be destroyed by trying to do that. And those who are rich, who have already received the favor of the goddess of fortune, they have to engage their money in the service of the Lord. In this way they can continue in their opulent position. Right, so section 2, verse 4 to verse 13. The appearance of King Prithu celebrated. Right, so it's a longer section, it's 10 verses, so let's go through the verses, just the verses first of all, then we'll come back and go through the verses again with their purports. Verse 4, of the two, so this is the sages speaking, of the two, the male will be able to expand his reputation throughout the world. His name will be Prithu. Indeed, he will be the first among kings. Verse 5. The female has such beautiful teeth and beautiful qualities that she will actually beautify the ornaments she wears. Her name will be Archie. In the future, she will accept King Prithu as her husband. Verse 6. In the form of King Prithu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared through a part of his potency to protect the people of the world. Through a part of his potency, his Shakti. So this is called Shakti Avesh. A living entity like us, but that he's invested with the Shakti, the power, a particular power of the Lord. In this case, to protect the people of the world. The goddess of fortune is the constant companion of the Lord, and therefore she's incarnated partially as Archie to become King Prithu's queen. Verse 7, the great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Viduraji, at that time all the Brahmins highly praised and glorified King Prithu, and the best singers of Gandharva Loka chanted his glories. The inhabitants of Siddhaloka showered flowers, and the beautiful women in the heavenly planets danced in ecstasy. Verse 8, conch shells, bugles, drums, and kettle drums vibrated in outer space. Great sages, forefathers, and personalities from the heavenly planets all came to earth from various planetary systems. Verses 9 and 10. Lord Brahma, the master of the entire universe, arrived there, accompanied by all the demigods and their chiefs. Seeing the lines of Lord Vishnu's palm on King Prithu's right hand, and impressions of lotus flowers on the soles of his feet, Lord Brahma could understand that King Prithu was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one whose palm bears the sign of a disc, as well as other such lines, should be considered a partial representation or incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Verse 11. The learned Brahmins, who were very attached to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, then arranged for the king's coronation. People from all directions collected all the different paraphernalia for the ceremony. Thus, everything was complete. 12. All the rivers, seas, hills, mountains, serpents, cows, birds, animals, heavenly planets, the earthly planet, and all other living entities collected various presentations according to their ability to offer the Lord. Verse 13. Thus the great King Prithu, exquisitely dressed with garments and ornaments, was coronated and placed on the throne. The king and his wife Archie, who was also exquisitely ornamented, appeared exactly like fire. Verse 4 to verse 13, the appearance of King Prithu, celebrated. Verse 4. Because now we have a male and a female who've sort of been drawn out of the dead body of King Vena by these great sages. Verse 4, of the two, the male will be able to expand his reputation throughout the world. His name will be Prithu. Indeed, he will be the first among kings. Prabhupada explains there are different kinds of incarnations of the Lord. Garuda, Lord Shiva, and Ananta, Prabhupada says, are all very powerful incarnations of the Brahman feature of the Lord. So Sachipati, or Indra, the king of heaven, is an incarnation of the lusty feature of the Lord. Aniruddha is an incarnation of the Lord's mind. Similarly, King Prithu is an incarnation of the ruling force of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, thus the saintly persons and great sages predicted the future activities of King Prithu, who was already explained as a partial incarnation of a plenary expansion of the Lord. So verse 5, the female has such beautiful teeth and beautiful qualities that she will actually beautify the ornaments she wears. Her name will be Archie. In the future, she will accept King Prithu as her husband. We carry on to verse 6. In the form of King Prithu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has appeared through a part of his potency to protect the people of the world. The goddess of fortune is the constant companion of the Lord, and therefore she has incarnated partially as Archie to become King Prithu's queen. Note these points. Partial. He's partial, she's partial. Prabhupada makes the point that in Bhagavad Gita the Lord says that wherever we see some extraordinary power, we should conclude that this is a specific, partial, representative or representation of the Lord in some particular form or other. And there's innumerable of them, but they're not all Vishnu Tattva. Many of them are Shakti Tattva, means incarnations of the potencies, the power of the Lord. So these are known, so they're jivas like us. These are, generally at least, these are known as Shaktivesha avatars. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, King Prithu was such a Shaktivesha avatar of the Lord. Similarly, Archie, King Prithu's wife, was a Shaktivesha avatar of the goddess of fortune. Yeah, it's all partial. Verse 7, the great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Viduraji, at that time all the Brahmins highly praised and glorified King Prithu, and the best singers of Gandharva Loka chanted his glories. The inhabitants of Siddha Loka showered flowers, and the beautiful women in the heavenly planets danced in ecstasy. 8. Conch shells, bugles, drums, and kettle drums vibrated in outer space. Great sages, forefathers, and personalities from the heavenly planets all came to earth from various planetary systems. Verses 9 and 10. Lord Brahma, the master of the entire universe, arrived there accompanied by all the demigods and their chiefs. Seeing the lines of Lord Vishnu's palm on King Prithu's right hand and impressions of lotus flowers on the soles of his feet, Lord Brahma could understand that King Prithu was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one whose palm bears the sign of a disc, as well as other such lines, should be considered a partial representation or incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada says there's a system for detecting incarnations. You know, of course, nowadays we often get cheap, in quote-unquote, so-called incarnations. But here Lord Brahma checks the hands and feet of Prithu for signs. So before accepting anyone as an incarnation, one should check by symptoms from Shastra. In the purport here, let me just have a quick look at the purport here. References made to Pondraka in the purport. Not named specifically, but it's obviously referring to Pondraka, who declared himself to be Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. And he told Krishna, because I'm Krishna and you're not, you must return to me by different symbols, like the conch, the club, the chakra, and the lotus flower. So Lord Krishna said, okay, I'll do that. Look, first of all, here comes the Sudarshan chakra, but you got to be able to catch it. So Pondraka is ready to catch it, but he couldn't, and it cut his head off. So that's a bogus so-called incarnation. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, without these symptoms, the pretender is subject to be killed by the authorities for pretending to be an incarnation of God. And as I heard, in India, it used to be illegal. There used to be laws. You cannot say you're an incarnation of God, unless you are, of course. But unfortunately, those incarnations were few and far between. So a lot of these people got decapitated. Verse 11, the learned Brahmins, who are very attached to the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, then arranged for the king's coronation. People from all directions collected all the different paraphernalia for the ceremony. Thus everything was complete. Verse 12, all the rivers, seas, hills, mountains, serpents, cows, birds, animals, heavenly planets, the earthly planets, and all other living entities collected various presentations according to their ability to offer the king. 13. Thus, the great King Prithu, exquisitely dressed with garments and ornaments, was coronated and placed on the throne. The king and his wife Archie, who was also exquisitely ornamented, appeared exactly like fire. So, okay, devotees, now the third section, which is from verse 14 to verse 20. The demigods make presentations to Prithu. And let me just have a very quick look here. I think we'll just go straight through it, because I think there's only one purport, maybe two. Verse 14, the great sages continue. The great sage, the great sage continued. That's Maitreya. My dear Vidura, Kuvera presented the great King Prithu with a golden throne. The demigod Varuna presented him with an umbrella that constantly sprayed fine particles of water and was as brilliant as the moon. That's an amazing umbrella. Keep you cool. Verse 15, the demigod of air, Vayu, presented King Prithu with 2 chamara whisks of hair. The king of religion, Dharma, presented him with a flower garland which would expand his fame. The king of heaven, Indra, presented him with a valuable helmet, and the superintendent of death, Yamaraj, presented him with a scepter with which to rule the world. These verses don't have purports, generally. Anyway, here's a verse with a purport. Verse 16. Lord Brahma presented King Prithu with a protective garment made of spiritual knowledge. Wow. Bharati, or Saraswati, the wife of Brahma, gave him a transcendental necklace. Lord Vishnu presented him with a Sudarshan disc. And Lord Vishnu's wife, the goddess of fortune, gave him imperishable opulences. So there's a little purport here. So Hari, or Upendra, that's Lord Vishnu. In the heavenly planets, he's Upendra. Gave Prithu a Sudarshan disc, but it's not the same as Lord Krishna's. Prabhupada doesn't explain why, or what the differences are. Yeah, we may find out later. Of course, it wouldn't be transcendental, like Krishna's Sudarshan disc. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, since King Maharaj Prithu was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's power, the Sudarshan disc given to him represented the partial power of the original Sudarshan disc. Verse 17. Lord Shiva presented him with a shield marked with 10 moons, and his wife, the goddess Durga, presented him with a shield marked with 100 moons. The moon demigod presented him with horses made of nectar, and the demigod Vishvakarma presented him with a very beautiful chariot. 18. The demigod of fire, Agni, presented him with a bow made of the horns of goats and cows. The sun god presented him with arrows as brilliant as sunshine. The predominating deity of Bhualoka presented him with slippers full of mystic power. The demigods from outer space brought him presentations of flowers again and again. So, of course, there is a purport here. It's very short. Yeah, it's very short. Let's just read straight through. This verse describes that the king's slippers were invested with mystic powers. Paduke Yoga Maya Yo. Thus, as soon as the king placed his feet in the slippers, they would immediately carry him wherever he desired. Mystic yogis can transfer themselves from one place to another whenever they desire. A similar power was invested in the slippers of King Prithu. Verse 19. The demigods who always travel in outer space gave King Prithu the arts to perform dramas, sing songs, play musical instruments, and disappear at his will. The great sages also offered him infallible blessings. The ocean offered him a conch shell produced from the ocean. Verse 20. The seas, mountains, and rivers gave him room to drive his chariot without impediments, and a Sutta, a Magadha, and a Vandi offered prayers and praises. They all presented themselves before him to perform their respective duties. So now section 4, verse 21 to verse 26, Prithu addresses the assembly. We're going to go through the translations and the purports, as it's a small section and there aren't many purports. 21. Thus when the greatly powerful King Prithu, the son of Vena, saw the professionals before him, to congratulate them he smiled, and with the gravity of the vibrating sounds of clouds, he spoke as follows. Verse 22. King Prithu said, O gentle Sutta, Magadha, and other devotee offering prayers, the qualities of which you have spoken are not distinct in me. Why then should you praise me for all these qualities when I do not shelter these features? I do not wish for these words meant for me to go in vain, but it is better that they be offered to someone else. So there's a short purport here. These verses, whatever was chanted by the Sutta Magadha and the devotee offering prayers, they're great, they're wonderful. They're all explaining the godly qualities of Prithu as a Shaktavash avatar. But the thing is, the qualities were not manifest yet, so Prithu didn't want them spoken of. He was warning, don't glorify unmanifest qualities. Now, of course, there are many so-called incarnations, but they're just fools and rascals. It's all accepted by other fools and rascals. So he wanted them to wait with his glorification. He didn't want an unqualified person to be glorified improperly. So verse 23. O gentle reciters, offer such prayers in due course of time, when the qualities of which you have spoken actually manifest themselves in me. The gentle who offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead do not attribute such qualities to a human being who does not actually have them. So the devotees, this is now the purport of verse 23, the devotees know who's God and who isn't. The impersonalists have no idea. They never offer prayers like that. Rather, they would prefer to accept a humanist God and offer prayers to him. That's the difference between a devotee and a demon. The demons manufacture their own gods or claim to be God themselves, like Ravana, etc. Prithu, even though God, rejected these practices. One who doesn't have the qualities should not engage followers in glorifying him, even though the qualities may come in due course. So that practice, Prabhupada says, is actually an insult. Verse 24, how could an intelligent man, competent enough to possess such exalted qualities, allow his followers to praise him if he did not actually have them? Praising a man by saying that if he were educated, he might have become a great scholar or great personality is nothing but a process of cheating. A foolish person who agrees to accept such praise does not know that such words simply insult him. Okay, there's a very short purport here. Prithu is a real incarnation. They accept that. That's why they're all giving gifts. He had just been crowned. So he hasn't had time to do anything to save the world, save humanity, show his affection for his devotees. He hasn't had a chance to do anything. So he was unwilling to accept the praises of his devotees. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, so-called incarnations of Godhead should therefore take lessons from the behavior of King Prithu. Demons without godly qualities should not accept false praise from their followers. Verse 25, as a person with a sense of honor and magnanimity does not like to hear about his abominable actions, a person who is very famous and powerful does not like to hear himself praised. 26. King Prithu continued, my dear devotees, headed by the sutta, just now I'm not very famous for my personal activities, because I have not done anything praiseworthy you could glorify. Therefore, how could I engage you in praising my activities? Exactly like children. So devotees, there you go. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of chapter 15. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.